What's up, kings and queens? It's Dan from Daft Previews, and today I'm going to take you through the most comprehensive NBA player prop video you will see for all 10 games on this upcoming slate. I'll be going through all the key players to discuss their props, and I'll share my thoughts on the script of each game. As always, I'll be sharing my screen. The app that I use to go through all this data is props.cash. And if you're interested in taking your own research to the next level, you can sign up today and get 25% off using my discount code Daft25. Now let's go.
Sub to the channel cause your boy's getting busy. Coming to you live from the west side of Sydney. We've got the free picks and the juice and the daily. It's all free, you don't even have to pay me.
We're kicking it off with the Washington Wizards versus Detroit Pistons. Now, Cade Cunningham is a game time decision. In terms of my script for this game, I think it's going to be high scoring. The game total is quite high. So some strong offensive outputs I think are going to happen. I think this game stays close, though. I don't see a blowout in this one. Something in my loins tells me that the Wizards can get the win here on the road. I'm not too sure. I don't really pick sides and totals too often, so you can ignore that. But let's get into the player props real quick. So hitting on the main ones, who do we have to look at? Isaiah Stewart? Nah, he ain't one that we normally look through. Jalen Duren, let's check his matchup out. We know that he's probably got a great matchup. Washington Wizards don't defend bigs very well. So let's have a look at his points and his rebounds. First up on his points. He's covered this in 6 of his last 10, 14.5 points. He's averaging 15.3 points per game. On head-to-head matchups here, sorry, let me get back into this. 15.5 points. What am I talking about? Head-to-head matchups versus the Washington Wizards 4 times. His last one, he scored 20 points against them. So pretty decent form there. Let's have a look to see how he plays with Cade Cunningham in the lineup, given that he's most likely going to be back. We can see that he's covered in 6 of his last 10 games with Cade Cunningham, still averaging 15 points per game. The 2 games he played with Cade against the Wizards, he did go under, though. So, look, 10 points seems quite safe for your parlays, but I'm not sure whether I'm man enough to take his line. Rebounds, check that out. Rebound line of 12.5. He's only covered in 1 of his last 10 games, but that just happened to be against the Washington Wizards, and he pulled down 19 rebounds. Looking at head-to-head matchups, the 2 games he's played them this year, 14 and 19 rebounds. So pretty juicy stats there. Looking for Jalen Duren and his rebounds. Kyle Kuzma's a name that you can't stop thinking about. Like back in his unders, but he's actually been playing not too bad lately. So looking at his points, he's only covered his 23.5 point line in 3 of his last 10 games. In head-to-head matchups, he's gone 2 from his last 4. This season, scored 32 and 21 points against them. Checking out his rebound prop, he's covered in 5 of his last 10, averaging 8.6 rebounds per game, so 6.5. Seems very doable, but when we look to see how he's played against the Pistons, we can see he's covered in 2 of 4, but his 2 games that he's played against them this year, he has rebounded quite well. So Kuzma rebounds, doesn't seem like a bad play. Looking at his assists, his last 10's been great, covering in 7 of his last 10, averaging 5.1 assists per game. Up against the Wizards, though, he's gone 8 and 4 in the 2 games this season. So, out of all these picks, you could take Kuzma for 4 assists, 6 rebounds, and maybe 20 points. I'm not too sure, but I think if you're looking at singles, probably his rebound prop, my favorite one so far, followed by his assists and then his points. Who else is there? Let's have a look at Jordan Poole. Jordan Poole's points line. Let's go. He's gone 5 of his last 10, averaging 16.7 in head-to-head matchups. You can ignore these because he was in the Warriors, but now as a Wizard, 10 and 16 points. Hasn't scored very well against them. Assist-wise, he's gone under in both games against the Detroit Pistons. He's actually gone under quite a lot, Jordan Poole, so the assists don't seem to be there. Someone who does get some assists, though, is Tyus Jones. Let's have a look at Tyus Jones. Check that out. He's had 3 games with 10-plus assists in his last 10. He's averaging 8.9 assists. He's covered this line in 5 of 10. But against the Pistons, he's gone under in 4 straight, including both games this season. Who else racks up the stats? Denny Advia. Let's check out his points line. 13.5. He's covered in 1 of 2 games against the Pistons this year. His last 10, he's covered it in 7 games, averaging 15.8. Rebound-wise, he's covered that in 5 of 10. He's averaging 7 rebounds per game. But against the Pistons, hasn't rebounded well. Assist-wise, he's gone close, 5 and 4 in the 2 games against the Pistons this year. And looking at his last 10, he's only covered this 4 times. So Nothing for Denny really screams out to me. Let's look at Bojan's points. Bogdanovic, his line set at 19.5. He's hit this in 4 of his last 10 games. The one head-to-head matchup against Washington was in 2022. He did score 25 points, but that was a very long time ago. But yeah, that's I think all we got. We don't have Cade Cunningham lines out yet, so a lot of the Pistons you probably wouldn't want to touch at this point. Jalen Duren's rebounds line, not too bad. Let's jump into the next game though. We've got a lot to get through. We're talking about the Miami Heat versus the New York Knicks. Now, I see the Knicks winning and covering in this one. They're a better team, and defensively, they're way more suited to slow the Heat down. The Heat added Terry Rozier not too long ago, but he hasn't added the scoring punch that Heat fans would have hoped for. Let's have a look at Bam Adebayo first. So, looking at his points prop, he's covered in 6 of his last 10, averaging 19.6. In head-to-head matchups against the New York Knicks, let's change this to regular season only. So these are his regular season games. He did score 21 in their last matchup, which is their only matchup this year. But outside of that, 2 of 5 overall. I don't like betting on Bam in general, but there's a lot of people that do. So I'll go through all of his. He's covered his rebound line of 10.5 in 6 of his last 10. Up against the Knicks, he's rebounded well in his last 2, but prior to that, not so well at all. Assists, he's gone under his assist in every single game against the Knicks. Looking at his last 10, he's gone over his assist line in 6 of his last 10 games. Isaiah Hartenstein, I think, is a game time decision for this one, but hopefully he does suit up because he's been a menace on the boards. So you can see his 11.5 rebound line, he's covered in 7 of his last 10, averaging 13.8. Head-to-head matchups with the Miami Heat, not great, but he was playing a reduced role in a lot of these games. I wouldn't worry too much about that. Terry Rozier, his points line is 13.5. These are the games that he's played with the Knicks, so he's struggling, safe to say the least. But in head-to-head matchups against the Knicks, he's gone over in 2 of his last 3, obviously playing with the Charlotte Hornets. Jalen Brunson, let's check him out. He's gone under in 4 straight games against the Miami Heat, but in his last 10, he's gone over this line in 8 of those 10 games, averaging 29.5 points, which is ridiculous. Let's check his assist line out. He's gone over that 6.5 assist line in 7 of his last 10 games. And in his games against the Miami Heat, he's gone under in his last 3. So points line should be very interesting. We'd have to dive into this a little bit further to see what it is. Looks like he's taking only 14 shot attempts per game against the Miami Heat. If we look at his last 10, he's averaging 19.6 shots per game. So unless the Heat can figure out a way to stop Jalen Brunson from shooting, he's going to cover this line. So, and if you think about it, Miami don't have much of defense in their backcourt, so I don't really mind that. Jalen Brunson overs. Let's have a look at Julius Randle. So, Julius Randle's points prop in the last 10. Well, his line's at 23.5, which is quite low, but his recent form's a bit down. He's covered this line in 5 of his last 10, averaging 24.7 points per game. So I've just turned on his actual line, and you can see that, yeah, his actual line is dropping. It's this black line here. Rebound, let's check the head-to-head. He's gone under in a lot of games against the Miami Heat as well. Rebound-wise, his line's at 8.5. He's only covered this in 3 of his last 10. Against the Miami Heat, he's gone under in 3 straight. Assist-wise, he has had some good passing games. His line's at 5.5. He's covered this 3 times in his last 5 against Miami. And in his last 10 games, he's only hit this in 4 of his last 10, but he has covered that in 3 consecutive games. Julius Randle. Jimmy Butler for the Miami Heat. Let's have a look at Jimmy. Jimmy's covered his points line in 4 of his last 10. He's averaging 19 points per game. Against the Knicks, he's covered this in 3 of his last 5. Rebound-wise, hasn't covered very well at all against them. Nothing to call out in the last 10. Assist-wise, very similar. So, but he has had some good passing games against the Knicks, but I think everybody knows you don't bet on Jimmy Butler until the playoffs start. Let's check out OG. He's been playing quite well recently. He's covered against the Miami Heat in 3 consecutive games. Looking at his last 10, he's hit this line in 6 of his last 10 games. Had his best game as in a Knicks jersey up against Denver, scoring 26 points. Covered in 7 of his last 10. He's also covered this in 4 of his last 5 against the Miami Heat. So, and he's covered it amazingly well. Given his line's only 4.5, I think that's something to look into. Averaging over 7 rebounds against the Miami Heat. in his last 10 games, averaging 4.8. So, yeah, very interesting one there for OG. Let's have a look at Tyler Hero. Tyler Hero's points-wise, he's covered 17.5 points in 6 of his last 10 in head-to-head matchups against New York. He's actually gone quite well, covering in 3 of his last 4. Rebound-wise, last 2 against the Knicks haven't been great. Over his last 10, he has hit it a few times, but also not hit it. Assist-wise, that looks very unpredictable, but against the Knicks, he has had some good passing games, but yeah, for Tyler Hero, I don't think I'd be taking any bets on Tyler Hero just this moment. Not until Terry Rozier finds his feet and we know where the hell the ball's going. So I think from this game, Jalen Brunson, his points, probably what interests me the most. OG's rebounds and probably Julius Randle assists. So leaning heavily on the Knicks players, given I think the Knicks are going to give it to the Heat as well. Let's jump into the next one. We're looking at the Philadelphia 76ers versus the Denver Nuggets. Now, both teams coming off a double-digit loss. Maxey and Tobias Harris are both risks for this game. They're game-time decisions. I think Denver should get the win at home, but if Maxey and Harris play, it should keep the game nice and close. Let's have a look at Joel Embiid. So, Joel Embiid scored 40-plus in his last 2 games against the Nuggets. Over his last 10, he's covered this 36.5 point line in only 4 of those games. He's averaging 39.5 points. It's a difficult one. He has done a lot of work against Jokic when it comes to points. A head-to-head matchup is strong, but I don't know. Can you just keep doing it? Can you just score 40-plus points over and over again against the same guy? I'm not too sure if they let that happen. Rebound-wise, 3 of his last 10, he's hit this line of 10.5 rebounds. In his head-to-head matchups, only got 7 rebounds in their most recent one. So I don't like his rebound line at all. Looking at his assists, he did get 10 assists in that game, 5 assists the game prior. And in his last 10, he's only hit his assist line in 3 of his last 10. So, and that line's moved up to 6.5. So I don't know. I'm kind of feeling an under in his points or maybe an under in his PRA. But with so many players on, so many games on, would you really be game enough to take an under today? I'm not too sure. Let's have a look at Nikola Jokic. Jokic's points line is at 27.5. Now, he's covered this in 4 straight, but in only 5 of his last 10. In head-to-head matchups against Embiid and the 76ers, 24, 25, and 25 points. So he has been scoring a bit better lately. I'm just checking to see. His last game against Philly, he took 20 shot attempts. He shot 11 from 20 from the field, which is pretty poor given he shoots a much higher percentage than that on the season. Very interested to see the stats on his last 5 games here, because there's the Philly game, and then the 4 games after, he's gone over his points line in every single one. And in those games, even the blowout to the Knicks, he went over. But check that out. In those games, he's averaging almost 20 shot attempts per game, and he's shooting 66% from the field. So, I don't mind a Nikola Jokic overs in this one, to be honest, based off what I'm seeing here. But let's check his other lines. Rebound-wise, he's covered this 11.5 rebound line in 5 of his last 10. Obviously didn't play minutes against the Knicks here. Well, not as many, so he easily could have covered that in 6 straight games. He had 19 rebounds in his last matchup against Philly. And he had 17 rebounds the matchup prior. So big rebound game from Jokic. I think we're on here. Assist-wise, he only got 3 assists in his last game against the Philadelphia 76ers. In his last 10, he's only covered his 9.5 assist line 3 times. So I've already got a value play in mind. We take Jokic over in points, over in rebounds, and under in assists. I don't mind that at all. But he has had, in his last 10, I forgot they were on a road, not a road streak. What's it called? Losing my mind here. They had a road trip. So 5 straight games on the road. The last game in Philly was the first one. So no excuse for that. But they're at home now. And at home, let's quickly check to see it. At home, he averages 9.6 assists per game. And on the road, 8.4. So he does get more assists when he's at home, but I still think 9.5. Big game against the 76ers. I'd still happily take the under here because I think he puts his head down and scores more buckets. Let's look at Jamal Murray. Looking at his points first, 23.5. He's covered this in 4 of his last 10. 3 games against the Philadelphia 76ers. He's gone under in all 3 of them. Assist-wise, 6, 7, and most recently 10 assists against the Philadelphia 76ers. And in his last 10, he's covered this line 4 times, averaging 7.2 assists per game. So, yeah, nothing strong for me on the assist front or the points front for Jamal Murray. I'd like to see a bounce back after the slow game against Philly last time, but if he hasn't gone under in three consecutive games against 76ers, what reason is there to support him going over in this one? Let's check out Tyrese Maxey, his points prop, 25.5. He's covered this in 4 of his last 10. Been quite slow recently. He is questionable for this game. Head-to-head matchups against the Nuggets, he's gone over a 1 in 3. He scored 25 points in his most recent game against them. Assist-wise, he did pull out 9 assists. And looking at his last 10 games, that's a lot of green right there. He's averaging 7 assists per game in those games. We know that the Indiana Pacers game was a blowout. Would need to check to see what happened against Sacramento and the Orlando Magic. But at first glance, this assist prop for Tyrese Maxey doesn't look too bad at all. Who else is there? Aaron Gordon. No one likes betting on Aaron Gordon. Let's check out MPJ real quick. MPJ, let's check his points. Last 2 games have been atrocious, but he had the flu against Indiana, and then they got blown out against the Knicks. So hopefully he's feeling a bit better now. But his line's at 15.5. He's covered this in 6 of his last 10. Head-to-head matchups, he's actually scored quite well against the Philadelphia 76ers, 20, 15, and 20. So, yeah, look, I don't hate this line. What I'd like to know is whether he's feeling a lot better, because I bet on him when he was versus the Indiana Pacers, and then I found out after that he was sick with the flu, and then the blowout happened against the Knicks. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Michael Porter Jr. bounce back in this one, provided that he's looking fully healthy and all that. So let's jump into the next game. We're looking at the Houston Rockets versus the Brooklyn Nets. Now, the Rockets are on a second game of back-to-backs. The Rockets haven't been good on the road this year, although the Nets always seem to find a way to lose games. So I think this game should be pretty close. The rest advantage has me leading towards the Nets. But look, if the game's close, it means no one's getting blown out and everyone should play all their minutes, right? So let's have a look at Nick Claxton. We'll check out his points and his rebounds. Points-wise, he's covered this in 5 of his last 10. Head-to-head matchups, 2 of his last 3 against the Rockets. Rebound-wise, he's gotten 10 rebounds in all games, but his line's at 12.5, so he's covered that in 2 of 3. In his last 10 games, he's averaging 12.1 rebounds, covering in 5 of his last 10. So 10 rebounds for Nick Claxton if you're potentially looking at parlays. Not a bad play. Let's check out Alperen Sengun. Sengun, looking at his last 10, averaging 23.4 points per game. In head-to-head matchups, he's hit this once against Brooklyn, but it did happen to be earlier this season. So points not a bad shout. Rebound-wise, we can see that he's covered this in 6 of his last 10. In head-to-head matchups, 2 of his last 3. So not a bad shout for his rebounds either. Assist-wise, he's got under his assist line in 3 straight games against the Nets. And looking at his last 10, you can see that he's covered this in 7 of those games, but 6 consecutive games in a row. He's gone over his assist line. So could today be the day where he finally covers his assists against the Brooklyn Nets? I'm not too sure, but if you're looking at parlays, 4, you can probably take with a bit of confidence. 4.5, pretty juiced though, so it'd probably move to 5.5. I'm not digging it. Let's have a look at Fred VanVleet. So Fred, he's covered his points line of 15.5 in 6 of his last 10, averaging 17.3 points per game. And looking at head-to-head matchups, he's covered in 3 of his last 4 against the Nets. He scored 21 points when they played earlier this year. This game is on the road for the Rockets, so that usually tends to produce for the more senior players. So let's just quickly have a look at his last 10 games. Let's check out his last 10 road games. Yeah, he's covered in 6 of his last 10 road games, averaging 18 points per game. So Fred VanVleet, let's check his assists. 7.5, he's covered in 3 of his last 10, but against the Nets, 2 of his last 4, but he did get 10 assists in their first matchup earlier this season. So, yeah, quite a tricky one there. Uncle Fred, who else is there? Jabari Smith Jr., he's gotten a little bit quiet, it feels, as of late. Looking at his last 10, actually, he's been doing all right. Just haven't heard any noise about him. He's averaging 14 points in his last 10 games. His line's only at 11.5. He's covered this in 6 of his last 10. In head-to-head matchups, 2 out of his last 3, but he only scored 7 points when they last matched up earlier this year. Rebound-wise, he had 12 rebounds in that game, covering 2 of his last 3. Looking at his last 10 games, he's covered this in 6 of his last 10, averaging 9.4 rebounds per game. So quite interesting to see there. I think he's someone has big dips though when he plays away. Let's check that out. He's averaging 8.2 rebounds a game this season on the road. When he's at home, 9.1. So rebounding much better at home than he is on the road. And the Rockets just happen to be on the road. So I shan't be taking young Jabari Smith. Let's check out Michael Bridges now. He's been doing all right. Michael McCall, I couldn't tell you. But I'll call him Michael for this video. Now, he's covered his points line in 5 of his last 10, averaging 24.7 points per game. In head-to-head matchups with the Houston Rockets, he's gone over in 2 of his last 6, averaging 21.2. They're the home team. Let's just check to see how he goes at home. Home versus away. He's averaging 22.6 points per game at home. And on the road, he's averaging 20.8. So he does see a bump up for 1.5 points when he's playing at home. But is that enough for me to take his overs? Nuh-uh. Assist-wise, he's been covering 5 of his last 10, averaging 3.8. But he has covered in 4 of his last 5. Head-to-head matchups, yeah, nothing really screaming out to me there for Michael Bridges. Cam Thomas, this is all dependent if he gets minutes though, isn't it? So Cam Thomas hasn't played much against the Rockets. So looking at his last 10, he's covered in 3 of his last 10, averaging 18.1. His line set at 23.5 points. My Lord. So even though he's more than capable of that, I'm not too sure. Cam Johnson is out, but yeah, I'm not sure about Cam Thomas. Jalen Green, he just had a massive game against the Charlotte Hornets. I know because I backed him. So put a bet on Jalen Green and he delivered. Great scoring output. Points-wise, the line's at 17.5. He's covered this in 5 of his last 10. Head-to-head matchups, he's gone under in his last 2 against the Brooklyn Nets. Assist-wise, 7 of his last 10, and he's covered his assist line in both games against the Brooklyn Nets. So assist could be something that we look at, but do I want to play the same bet 2 days in a row? I'm not too sure. Let's jump into the next one. We're looking at the Los Angeles Clippers versus Boston Celtics. Now, Kristaps Porzingis is a game-time decision after he rolled his ankle. It's a back-to-back game for the Clippers, so they may go deeper into their bench. The Celtics are 20-1 at home this season, so you can't help but lean that way. So lean towards the Celtics. Who are we going to look at first? Check out Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday, we check out his points and his assists. Points-wise, he's been decent, covering in 4 of his last 5, averaging 17 points per game. Head-to-head matchups, he's gone over against the Clippers in 2 of his last 3, including 1 game earlier this season where he scored 20 points. So Kristaps Porzingis is out. Let's check out his numbers without Kristaps. Without Kristaps, he's averaging 14.5 points per game this season. With Kristaps, he's averaging 12.9. So he does score a little bit more when Kristaps isn't there. So Drew Holiday points could be one to look at. Assist-wise, he's covered this in 3 of his last 5. 5 of his last 10. But he's covered his assist prop in every single game against the Clippers. 3 straight, averaging 7 assists per game. So that doesn't look too bad either. Let's have a look at Kawhi Leonard in this one. So I'm already thinking of backing his unders in this. Let's look through the numbers. Firstly, he's covered his points line here of 26.5 in only 1 of his last 10 games, and that was against the Toronto Raptors. He's averaging 20.6 points per game. In head-to-head matchups against the Celtics, he's gone under in his last 2, although they were in 2022. But the main reason I'd be taking Kawhi Leonard unders is purely because he's on a back-to-back. And we know what the Clippers are like. They probably won't play him as many minutes. I did check his back-to-back numbers, and he plays close to 30 minutes per game. But compared to what happens on the season, where he averages 34.3 points per game, it's still 4 minutes less than what he normally plays. So, yeah, I think I'm going to be taking Kawhi unders. Let me tell you that. Rebound-wise, that's a bit inconsistent. 6 of his last 10, though, and he's averaging 8.5 rebounds against the Celtics. Assist-wise, he was doing very well. Check that out. I actually played him for over 3.5 assists against the Raptors here, and he absolutely flunked. But he has been hitting them well recently, but only 1 in 2 against the Boston Celtics. So rebound-wise, I don't mind it. But at the same time, I'll be taking his under in points because of minutes. So that could put this at jeopardy if that's true. If my read on this is right, then there's a risk there. Let's have a look at Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum, he scored well against the Clippers, scoring and covering in 2 of his last 3. In his last 10 games, he's only covered in 3 of his last 10. If Kristaps Porzingis is out, let's have a look at see how Jason Tatum plays. Without Porzingis, averaging 29.1 points per game. With Porzingis, he's averaging 26. So 3 points extra for Jason Tatum without Porzingis. He's covered this in 6 of his last 10 games without Kristaps. Rebound-wise, he's averaging 7.9 in his last 10. Head-to-head matchups covered in 2 of his last 3. If we take Kristaps out of this, his rebounds actually get worse. 7.4 in his last 10. So it doesn't rebound any better with Kristaps. It actually goes the other way around. Assist-wise for Tatum, covered in 5 of his last 10. He's gone under in all games against the Clippers. If we remove Kristaps from the equation, he's averaging 4 assists in his last 10. So no real noticeable difference there. But Tatum points potentially, but yeah, not much I'm loving about that prop. Let's have a look at James Harden. Firstly, his points. He's gone over in 3 straight games, but they were the only 3 in his last 10. 5 games against the Boston Celtics, he's covered in 4 of his last 5. But in his only game as a Clipper, he did go under. Assist-wise for James Harden, he had 9 assists in that game against Boston. He's averaging 9 assists against them. In his last 10 games, he's covered this in 6 of his last 10, averaging 10.1 assists per game. So, yeah, it's not screaming out to me to take James Harden's assists in this one, especially on a back-to-back. Who knows what will happen? Let's have a look at Jaylen Brown. He's covered his points prop in 5 of his last 10. He's had some terrible games. In head-to-head matchups, he's covered in his last 2 against the Clippers, 29 and 24 points. Let's see his points line without Porzingis. Check that out. The biggest beneficiary. He's averaging 27.1 points per game without Kristaps Porzingis in his last 10. So 26.5 on the season he averages without Kristaps. When Kristaps plays, he averages 21.7 points. So he looks like the biggest beneficiary. Take note of that. No Kristaps, take his over in points. That's what I'm thinking here. Jaylen Brown. Rebound-wise, though, yeah, you'd be crazy to bet on his rebounds. Head-to-head, 7 and 6 in his last ones. Assist-wise, covered in his last 3, but has gone under in all games against the Clippers. So Jaylen Brown points, something definitely to watch. Let's have a look at Derek White. Derek White, 1 in 3 against the Clippers, 3 of his last 10. But Kristaps doesn't play. He actually scores quite a bit. He averages 18 points per game this year without Kristaps, and he averages 15 with Kristaps. So it's a small lift. Derek White assists. I know this player is inconsistent anyway, but yeah, I didn't think I was going to find anything on Derek White anyway. Let's pause. Just pump the brakes. Now, for those of you who have been watching this channel for a minute, you would have noticed the slight differences in how I'm presenting these props and all these bets. Although these previews have been getting a lot of attention, a lot of people have been watching and tuning in, what I've noticed is that the actual hit rate of a lot of my picks winning has dropped dramatically. And the reason why is since I started doing these in-depth previews and making so much discussion around the player matchups, I've been making my bets based, not purely based, but the first thing I would look up is the matchup. And then I'd kind of grind it out from there to figure out what's going wrong. I mean, what's going right. But then it ultimately wasn't working for me. So I actually dug deep into the archives. There was a video that I did last year, and I'll share a pin for it so you guys can check it out. But it was about the winning strategy for pick and player props. And the key call out in that video is that matchups aren't very important. So why make a big deal out of it? So I was actually humbled by that last video. So I've decided to ditch all the conversation about matchups, purely talk about the props, the lines, and so all that type of stuff. But yeah, you can check that video out if you want to. If not, just keep riding with me because we've got a lot more props to get through. So let's get back into the preview. We're looking at the Utah Jazz versus Charlotte Hornets. Now, the Hornets, they are in a back-to-back. They've got a terrible home record against Western Conference teams. Utah have been great in recent times. They've won 13 of their last 19 games. Utah will win this game, but will they cover an 8-point spread? I'm not too sure of at the moment, but let's have a look at their player props. Colin Sexton, let's look at him first. His points line is at 18.5. He's covered this in 9 of his last 10, averaging 23.2 points per game. I was an idiot, and I actually bet on him to cover on this game here against Washington, and it sucked. Let's check his rebounds, let's check his assists, actually. So Assist-wise, he's covered in 8 of his last 10, averaging 5.7. I'm not going head-to-head stats for Colin Sexton purely because he was in a different role. You weren't going to see anything impressive in those. But we know immediately that the Charlotte, they give up a lot of points, a lot of rebounds, they give up a lot of assists, they give up a lot of threes, they give up everything. So Colin Sexton, he's got a great form for his points, great form in his assists. It's really up to you which one you decide, but make sure you dig in a little bit deeper. Let's have a look at LaMelo Ball. He's at 25.5 point line. He's gone under in 3 straight. You'd think that his points would actually explode with no Terry Rozier, but that's not happening. Assist-wise, his line's at 8.5. He's only covered that twice in his last 10 games. And rebound-wise, yeah, it's been very inconsistent. So I wouldn't take any bets on LaMelo Ball. I'm not game enough to take his under purely because of how many shots he takes. And he's capable of getting a lot of assists, but I'm not taking any overs, I'll tell you that. Lauri Markkanen, let's check his points and rebounds. In his last 10, he's covered his points line 6 times, averaging 25 points per game. Last 2 against the Charlotte Hornets, 25 and 13. Rebound-wise, he's gone 11 and 13 rebounds against them. And in his last 10, he's covered his rebound line in 8 of his last 10 games. So he's had a slight dip in form here. Pelicans and then the Washington Wizards. I think he had a great matchup there against the Wizards. But as I just said, matchups aren't too important. I think this game stays close, and I think there's a good chance of getting this rebound here. So, rebound prop. John Collins, he's been pretty good. Quiet achiever for the Utah Jazz. He's hit his points prop of 13.5 in 7 of his last 10. He has gone under in both games against the Charlotte Hornets. Looking at his rebound prop, he exploded against the Washington Wizards with 16. That's probably why Laurie didn't hit his. But yeah, he's only hitting 3 of his last 10. And against the Charlotte Hornets, 10 and 5. So now that we know John Collins stole all the rebounds in that last matchup against Washington, it gives me a bit more confidence to take Laurie to cover his 8.5. Miles Bridges for the Charlotte Hornets. Let's check his points prop real quick. All right. In his last 10, he's covered his points prop 4 times, averaging 21.8 points per game. Rebound-wise, he's covered that in 4 of his last 10, averaging 7.4. And assist-wise, not too much to talk about there. So I wouldn't have any confidence taking Miles Bridges. But Brandon Miller, he's the one that everyone predicted to see a big uplift in form, given Terry's gone. I did take him against Detroit, which cashed. I didn't take him against the Rockets, and he sucked. He only scored 5 points in that game. Rebound-wise, yeah, he's a bit inconsistent right now. So I don't know. Is there a reason to take Brandon Miller apart from the fact that he should get more shots? He only played 19 minutes against the Houston Rockets, and I don't believe he got injured, and he only took 8 shot attempts. So maybe he was just playing poorly. I'm not too sure. But that's all the key matchups for this game. Let's jump into the next one. We're looking at the New Orleans Pelicans versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, I believe Zion is out for this game. Both teams are on a back-to-back. The Bucks defensively, they're absolutely horrible. The Pelicans are actually decent on both ends. This game is played in Milwaukee, I believe. So I think the game should be close. Hopefully it's high scoring. Let's look at Jonas Valanciunas. I know centers have had a bit of success against the Milwaukee Bucks. Jonas has covered this line in 8 of his last 10, averaging 13.7. 2 games against the Bucks, 37 points and 16 points. So a lot of strong reasons just by looking at that as a reason to take Jonas. But if we look at his numbers without Zion, he's averaging 15.2 points per game this year. He's covered in 7 of 9 this season without Zion. With Zion, he's averaging 13.6. So it's a 2-point differential. But if his line's only 11.5, with or without Zion, would you not take him at these odds? We know the Bucks aren't stopping many teams defensively, so that doesn't seem like a bad one. Rebound-wise, his line's at 8.5. He's covered in 7 of his last 10. 2 games against the Bucks, 18 and then 3. So that's a bit interesting. But yeah, don't mind his points line just by looking at that. Brook Lopez, points-wise, he's had some good games against New Orleans, 30 and 15. Looking at his last 10, he's averaging 12.7 points per game. Rebound-wise, he's in great rebounding form. I know that because I just took him to get some rebounds against the Cleveland Cavaliers. He's averaging 7.9 rebounds per game in his last 10. And he's averaging 8 rebounds per game against the New Orleans Pelicans. So Brook Lopez rebounds, I don't mind at all. Form's definitely there. He is on a back-to-back, but I think he'll be right. They don't really have a backup center that they can play instead of him. Let's check out Dame. Dame Lillard points. He's gone under in 9 of his last 10 games. The line for him is set at 29.5, which seems quite high. He's got one most recent matchup against the Pelicans. This was last season, though. He scored 41. But automatically, Dame to score more than 30 points. He's only scored more than 30 points in 13 of 42 games this year. So it's a 31% hit rate. And the Pelicans, they got Herb Jones they could throw at him. So some length and some size. And I don't know if we'd be willing to take Dame's overs in this one, unless Giannis is out. And from what I can see, Giannis is playing. Assist-wise for Dame, he's covered his assist line in 5 of his last 10, averaging 6.8. So even that, I would lean to the under. But if he's not scoring, he's probably passing. So I had to have a bit more confidence taking Dame's under here, to be honest. Especially on a back-to-back. We'd have to look to see his back-to-back stats. But let's have a look at CJ McCollum. Points-wise, 17.5. He's covered in 5 of his last 10. He's averaging 19.5 points per game. His last matchup against the Bucks was in 2022. He scored 31 points, so that don't matter. Assist-wise, did not come into this game with great passing form. He's averaging 4.6 in his last 10. He's only hit in 1 of his last 5. Giannis, he's in great passing form. Check out the assists on this bloke. What a machine. Last 5 games, he's averaging 9.6 assists per game, which is pretty amazing. In head-to-head matchups, I know they were a long time ago, so 1 and 4, but assist-wise, recent trend, Giannis is going crazy. Rebound-wise, it's hard to predict with Giannis. He's usually getting 10, but he's capable of these monster games. I wouldn't take his rebound prop. Points-wise, his line set at 33.5. His last 2 games against the Pelicans, he scored 42 and 50 points, which is pretty crazy. So can Giannis be the next player to score 50, 60 points this season? Maybe. But he's going to be doing something on the offensive end, I'll tell you that. So assist-wise, great recent form. Points-wise, he's got excellent form against the Pels. So interesting to see how he goes. Who else is there? Brandon Ingram. Brandon Ingram's only covered his points line in 1 of his last 10 games. Can you believe it? This game against the Charlotte Hornets was the only game where I took Brandon Ingram unders, and he absolutely exploded. Then he continued to go under in every single game. What luck. Rebound-wise, he's covered in 5 of his last 10, and assist-wise, he's covered in 5 of his last 10, averaging 6.7. So I can't believe this points thing. I just realized that now. That Charlotte game, I took his unders, and he exploded. Do we take unders again on Brandon Ingram? Potentially. Quick look at Chris Middleton. He's covered this line in 4 of his last 10. Rebound-wise, 3 of his last 10. And assist-wise, been decent. 7 of his last 10, he's covered this assist line. So Chris Middleton assists, not a bad shout. Let's jump into the next one. We're looking at the Minnesota Timberwolves versus San Antonio Spurs. Now, the Spurs are on a back-to-back, but their starters didn't play heavy minutes in that game. The Wolves are the much better team, but they haven't been impressive lately. I know they've got a lot of wins, but they've had a pretty easy schedule as of late. And I feel like the Spurs at home can keep it close. I think this could be a letdown spot for the Timberwolves, but look, I don't bet sides and totals that often, so I could be talking nonsense. Let's look at Rudy Gobert. In his last 10, he's covered his points line in 6 out of 10. 6 games against the San Antonio Spurs, he's gone under in 5 of them. But the only game he went under was their previous matchup in December. He scored 16 points. Rebound-wise, he also had 20 rebounds in that game. Could Rudy be the next player to get motivated with Wemby's presence? You know, bit of a French connection going on there. I think there's a good chance. He's hit his rebounds line in 7 of his last 10, averaging 14.8 rebounds. I'm not hating this. I must be honest with you. After him seeing do 20 against Wemby, actually, let's just check this. Check to see. Did Wemby play in the previous game as well? He did too. So Wemby played in both games that they've played each other this year. So the last game, you can't say it was just a Wemby factor because Wemby was in both. Points-wise, yeah, okay. So maybe I'm not frothing as hard as I thought I was once with Rudy Gobert. Naz Reid, he's been pretty good at certain stages this season. Covered in his last one against the Spurs. Look, no surprise to see him go under. I think Karl Anthony Towns scored 120 points in these 3 games, so no need for Naz Reid to do anything. Who else is there? Trey Jones. He can rack up the assists, this guy, I believe. Yeah, there it is. 6.5 assist line, 5 of his last 10, 3 games against the Timberwolves. 6 games, sorry. He's covered in 3, but he's got under in his last 2. So, Karl Anthony Towns, look at his scoring in the last 3 games. Firstly, against the Spurs, 3 out of 6, covers in every second game. Looking at his last 10, he's covered in 5 of them, but he has covered in 3 straight games. Rebound-wise, he's only hit it in 3 of his last 10, and assist-wise, 6 of his last 10. So nothing spectacular going on. He went under in his assists both games against the Spurs. He did go over in his rebounds in his last 2 games against the Spurs, though. So Karl Anthony Towns' rebounds, yeah, it could be there, but he doesn't have that dog in him. Jeremy Sohan, I wouldn't normally stop at a player like this, but he's been filling up the stat sheet recently. Points-wise, he's covered his points line in 8 of his last 10, averaging 14.8 points per game. Against the Minnesota Timberwolves, he's covered in 3 of his last 4. Rebound-wise, not so much. Assist-wise, not so much either. But in his last 10, his assists have been okay, and his rebounds have been very good. He's averaging 7 rebounds a game in his last 10. Jeremy Sohan. Let's look at Wemby. Wemby, look at that. Averaging 25 points per game in his last 10. He's covered this line in 8 of them. Against the Minnesota Timberwolves, 29 points and 12 points. So that 29 points was a home game for the Spurs, and that's where they just happen to be once again. So Wemby points doesn't look like a bad shout. He got 9 and 10 rebounds. His line's at 10.5. His rebound form has been better lately, but up against Rudy, not too sure if I'll take him. He's not going to get those easy offensive rebounds that he's used to. Assist-wise, yeah, you're not taking Wemby for assists. You're a madman. But points-wise, let's just have a quick look at this. He's averaging 20.5 points per game this season. At home, 20.9. On the road, 20. So you don't see a major uplift in his points prop, believe it or not. Let's check Ant Edwards. Anthony Edwards has covered his points line in 4 of his last 10, averaging 22 points per game. He's gone over in 2 of his last 3 against the Spurs, 3 of his last 6. Assist-wise, he's gone over in his last 2 against the Spurs. They were both this season. Looking at his last 10, he's been passing the ball quite well. He's covered in 7 of his last 10, averaging 5.5 assists per game. So, and Edwards' assist don't look too bad. And Devin Vassell. Points line, he's covered in 3 of his last 5. He's done well against the Timberwolves, though. Covered in 3 consecutive. Assist-wise, 2 of his last 3 against them. On these last 10, he's covered his assists 6 times, 4.9. I actually took him to cover his assists against Portland, and he didn't get close. God damn it. Let's jump into the next game. Looking at the Los Angeles Lakers versus the Golden State Warriors, and as usual, LeBron and AD are game time decisions. The Lakers offense has been great recently, whilst the Warriors defense hasn't. They've allowed like 120 plus in 3 straight games. The spread's only 2.5 points, so I think there's going to be a close game, but it'll also be a high-scoring game. So Anthony Davis, let's check him out. His line's at 25.5. He's covered this in only 5 of his last 10. Up against the Warriors, he scored 39 in his last matchup against them, but that was last season. So looking at his rebounds, his line's at 11.5. He's covered that in 6 of his last 10 games. I don't know if I take him to cover that, but I definitely take him for probably 10. Looking back to how he's played the Warriors, look, he's only covered in 2 of his last 4. So even the 10, probably not so safe. Assist-wise, he's been passing the ball a lot better lately, covering in 6 of his last 10. Against the Warriors, he got 6 the last time they played. So 80 assists, there could be a lot of value there, especially at 3.5. A lot of the time, as of late, this has been at 4.5. That's not a bad play. Steph Curry, he's covered this line in 3 of his last 10. He's averaging 25 points per game. Last 2 matchups against the Lakers, he scored 33 and 27. He's covered his assist prop both times. And in his last 10, he's covered his assist prop in 8 of his last 10 games, which is pretty remarkable. And once again, I took his assist prop here against the Sacramento Kings. Like, how does he get all these assists? Then I back his assists against the Kings, and then he finishes on 2. Just my luck. D'Lo, he's been playing quite well recently. He's covered his points line in 7 out of his last 10, averaging 23 points per game. Head-to-head matchups against the Warriors, only 1 of his last 4. But he has been scoring the ball quite well. Assist-wise, not too bad. 3 of his last 5, averaging 6.4 assists. He's gone under in all 4 games against the Warriors, though, when it comes to his assists. So I think if I was going to bet on D'Lo, probably be something around his points, because this is going to be a high-scoring game, I think. And I don't think AD or LeBron are scoring 40 in this one. So D'Lo is going to have to chip in. I don't mind that. I don't mind that at all. Who else is there? Jonathan Kuminga. He's been playing quite well recently. Check that out. He scored 20 plus in 5 consecutive games, averaging 25.6 points per game. 4 matchups against the Lakers. They were all a long time ago. He's only averaging 5, but I wouldn't worry about that. That is pretty crazy. His line's at 17.5, and I'm pretty sure he's still playing off the bench, but his recent form is crazy. Check this out. Shooting 68% from the field. That's pretty cool. And he's even shooting 47% from deep. Jonathan Kuminga. If you like recent form, Jonathan Kuminga's your guy, let me say. What else is there? Let's check out LeBron James. 24.5 points. He's covered in 6 of his last 10 against the Warriors. One from 2. Let's check out his recent form on rebounds. Rebound-wise, he's covered in 4 of his last 10. But against the Warriors, he's rebounded very well. 15 and 9 in his last 2. He's gone over his assist line in both games against the Warriors. But in his last 10, he's only gone over 5 times. He is averaging 8 assists per game, but it really is dependent on matchup there. So there's no recent form that says back his assists or his rebounds or his points. Well, you can probably lean to his points. It's going to be a big game. High scoring. I can see LeBron scoring more than 24.5 points in this game. So I don't mind that one whatsoever. Who else is there? Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson's covered his points line in 6 of his last 10. Head-to-head matchups against the Lakers. He's gone over in his last 2. Where's this game being played? This game's at Golden State, so home game for Klay. He averages 16.5 points per game at home this year. He's averaging 18.7 on the road. So in most years, Klay Thompson averages a lot more at home. It's a different story this season. So, yeah, not too sure what you make of that. Let's have a look at Austin Reeves real quick. He hasn't made the headlines for quite some time. He's covered his points line in 4 of his last 10. He's averaging 13.6. Head-to-head matchups, he's gone over in his last 2 against the Warriors. Assist-wise, he had 8 assists in his last game against them. And looking at his last 10, he's covered this in 5 of them. So no strong read on that one. So from this game, what are we thinking? Steph Curry assists look good. Anthony Davis assists aren't bad. D'Lo points and LeBron points are probably the ones that I'm leaning to at the moment, but I'll leave it for you guys to do your research and dive into that one. Let's jump into the very last game. It's the Sacramento Kings versus the Dallas Mavericks. So what do I know about this game? There's a lot of game time decisions for Dallas. I think Derek Jones, Kyrie Irving, Maxi Kleber, and Dwight Powell, all game time decisions for Dallas. Dallas is on a back-to-back as well. Both teams have been pretty poor defensively, so I think this should be a high-scoring game, and hopefully Dallas doesn't get blown out. Let's have a look at Domantas Sabonis, Mr. Triple-Double. He's gone under his points line in 6 straight games. Against Dallas, he's hit 2 of his last 4. Rebound-wise, he's gone under this rebound line 8 times in his last 10 games. The line's set at 13.5, so it is quite a big line. And against the Mavs, he's only gone over once. So, but he is getting that close to that 10. Assist-wise, he's actually hit his assist line of 9.5. 6 of his last 10 games, averaging 9.7. And against the Mavs, he's only hit this in 1 of his last 4. But recent form, passing game is on point, but his lines do seem higher given the favorable matchup. Look at that. Even points and rebounds. If you just look at his PRAs, he's only hit his PRA 3 of his last 10 games. He's only hit his PRA in 1 of 4 games against the Dallas Mavericks. It just happened to be the last game that he played against them. So, De'Aaron Fox. All right. So, points-wise, he's covered his points line in 4 straight games against the Mavericks. In his last 10, he's only covered it 4 times, though. Assist-wise, he's covered that in 4 of his last 10 games as well. And he also covered it in 4 straight games against the Dallas Mavericks. So his recent forms have been a bit, how you going? But he always seems to play well against Dallas by the looks of things, covering his points and his assist lines in all 4 games. Let's talk about Luka Doncic. He just scored, 73 points, Luka. Looking at his last 10, he's covered that line 4 out of 10 games. His line is now up to 38.5, and that's on a back-to-back. That's crazy. Now, look, I wouldn't be surprised if he hits it. I'm just not man enough to bet on someone to pretty much score 40 points at minus 111. You're crazy. He's gone under his points line in 3 straight games against the Kings. He hasn't even scored 30 plus against them. So will he be tired? I'm not too sure. Rebound wise, 9, 10, and 10 against them. In his last 10, he's only covered in 3. Assist wise, he's only covered in 4 of his last 10, and he's gone under his assist line in 3 straight games against the Sacramento Kings. So for Luka, what I'm probably thinking already is probably just taking the under in his PRA, perhaps. He's gone under in every game against the Kings, and he's only gone over in 2 of his last 10. So, yeah, when he played Boston, what did he do against Boston? He had 18 rebounds and 13 assists against Boston. And we know that up against the Atlanta Hawks, he scored 73 points. So outside of something ridiculous like that occurring, can Luka do it? But then there's also a chance that Kyrie can come back into this game. I'm not sure whether he's going to play or not, but actually, yeah, screw it. I'm not betting his unders. I'm not a madman. Who else is there to look at? Keegan Murray, he's been pretty quiet, but let's check his points prop. He's a bit how you going. You'd be a madman to bet on him. He's covered in 1 of his last 4. It just happened to be his last game. And there's Malik Monk. He's gone under in all games against the Dallas Mavericks, and he's covered in 5 of his last 10. Assist-wise, he's had some pretty good games in there, covering 5 of his last 10, averaging 6.1 per game, but he has gone under in 3 straight games against the Dallas Mavericks as well. So, yeah, look, can De'Aaron Fox break his, pretty shady form and get it cranking against the Dallas Mavericks? But look, I wouldn't bet on this game until I know who's playing. Wait till the lineups are confirmed. All right, Kings and Queens, that's a wrap on the preview. I hope you guys liked it. Let me know in the comment section. Speaking of comment section, check the pinned comment and you'll see my final picks that I've decided on after all of this wonderful research. My tracker isn't up to date yet, so I won't have the recap ready, but that will be ready for the next video. And if you do have a few minutes to spare, check out my latest video, which is a walkthrough on how to use props.cash to research NBA player props. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.